She was only 5 years old, hiding in the restaurant's storage room while her mother worked another double shift, until she answered the phone in perfect Italian, and the most dangerous man in the city looked up from his table and said, "Find out who she is. And don't let her leave." I was 13 minutes late. "Mama, my tummy hurts," Lucia whispered, her small voice nearly swallowed by the clatter of pots and the shouted orders of the line cooks. "I know, Piccolina," I whispered back, my heart clenching. She'd had crackers and cheese for lunch again. That was all I'd had time to pack before my morning shift at the diner across town. "There's pasta in my locker. You can eat in the storage room, okay? Just like last time." Her dark eyes, so much like her father's it still hurt to look at them sometimes, met mine with that solemn understanding no 5-year-old should have to carry. "I'll be quiet," she promised in Italian, the language we spoke when it was just the two of us. God, I hated this. 3 years since Marco died. 3 years of scrambling, surviving, stitching together shifts and childcare and dreams that kept getting smaller. I'd sold my wedding ring 6 months ago. I still felt its absence like a missing tooth. Gianna. Marco, the floor manager, not my late husband, appeared around the corner, his face flushed and tight. "You're late. Again." "I know, I'm sorry. The sitter canceled last minute and I had to." "I don't want excuses." His eyes flicked to Lucia, then back to me hard. "You know the rules. No kids in the kitchen." My throat tightened. "Please, Marco. Just tonight. I'll work a double tomorrow. I'll take the bad sections, just." "Gianna." His voice dropped. "You're a good waitress. But Mr. Valente is here tonight. Private dining room. VIP service only." He glanced again at Lucia, and something almost like pity crossed his face. "Keep her out of sight. If he sees her, if anyone complains, I can't protect you." The name sent ice down my spine. Antonio Valente. Everyone who worked at Bellissimo knew the name. Owner. Silent partner. The man whose business associates filled the private dining room twice a month and left tips that could cover a month's rent. The man whose presence made even Marco nervous. I'd never seen him. I'd been careful about that. "She'll stay in the storage room," I said quickly. "I promise. You won't even know she's here." Marco hesitated, then jerked his head toward the back. "Go. Table 12 needs drinks 5 minutes ago." I led Lucia through the kitchen chaos to the storage room, a cramped space lined with shelves of dry goods and extra linens. I pulled out the folding chair I'd hidden behind the flour sacks and set her up with the container of cold pasta, her coloring books, and the battered stuffed rabbit she'd named Papa. "Remember," I said in Italian, crouching to her level, tucking a dark curl behind her ear. "Quiet as a mouse. If anyone comes, I hide," she finished in the same language, solemn. "And I don't talk." I kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of the cheap strawberry shampoo I'd stretched to last 3 months. "I love you more than gelato," I whispered, our little ritual, always in Italian. Her face brightened. "More than the moon? More than all the stars? More than Papa's lasagna?" My heart twisted. She barely remembered him. Just fragments I kept alive with stories and photos and recipes I could no longer afford to make. "Even more than that," I managed. I left her there, small and quiet and too brave, and pushed back into the chaos of the dining room. Bellissimo during dinner service was a ballet of controlled elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over white tablecloth. The air smelled of garlic, wine, and wealth. I moved through my section on autopilot, smiling, recommending, refilling, while my mind stayed locked on the storage room, counting down the hours until I could take Lucia home. I didn't know that in the private dining room at the back, a man with cold eyes and a frozen heart was sitting down to a meeting that would bore him. I didn't know that in 30 minutes, my daughter would answer a phone call that would change all of our lives. I didn't know that the most dangerous man in the city was about to hear her voice and decide we belonged to him. Before we begin, please hit that like and subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from in the comment. The private dining room was a world apart from the main restaurant, dimmer, more intimate, insulated from the ordinary chaos beyond its heavy wooden doors. I'd only been inside twice before, always quick, always invisible. Tonight, I carried a tray of aperitifs with hands that had stopped trembling years ago. Professionalism was armor. I wore it well. 6 men sat around the table, their suits worth more than my annual salary. But my eyes went immediately to the one at the head. Though a round table shouldn't have a head, somehow it did, because of him. Antonio Valente. He was younger than I'd imagined. Perhaps late 30s, with dark hair silvered at the temples, a sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. He wore his wealth like a second skin, the kind of ease that came from never having questioned whether you belonged anywhere. But it was his stillness that unnerved me. While the other men laughed and gestured, he simply watched. Predatory. Patient. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said, my voice steady as I placed drinks before them with practiced efficiency. "Can I get you anything else?" "You're new," one of the older men said in Italian, his eyes lingering too long on my face. 3 months, I replied in English deliberately. Antonio's gaze sharpened, but he said nothing. I moved around the table, hyper-aware of his attention, tracking my movements like a physical touch. When I reached him last, he didn't reach for his scotch immediately. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice low and smooth, with just a trace of an accent I couldn't place. I nodded and turned to leave, exhaling only when I reached the hallway. My heart pounded against my ribs for reasons I didn't want to examine. Get through the shift. Get Lucia home. Survive another day. I was halfway to the bar when my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I'd kept it on silent, but set to vibrate. The school, the landlord, any emergency with Lucia, I needed to know immediately. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. My stomach clenched. Unknown numbers were never good news. I ducked into the alcove near the kitchen and answered, my voice low. "Hello?" Silence. Then a small, frightened voice. "Mama." My blood ran cold. "Lucia." I switched immediately to Italian, my voice urgent. "What's wrong? Why do you have a phone?" "I found it," she whispered in the same language, and I could hear tears thickening her voice. "On the shelf." It was ringing and I thought maybe it was you, Ann. "Tesoro, it's okay," I soothed, my heart hammering. Someone had left their phone in the storage room. "Where are you? Are you still in the back?" "Yes, but Mama, I'm scared. There are loud noises and—" "Shoo, amore, I'm coming right now. Stay where you are. I love you more than gelato," she finished, her voice so small and brave it cracked something in my chest. I ended the call and spun around, directly into Marco. "Was that?" he started, his face furious. "I have to check on her. 2 minutes. I swear. The private room needs their antipasti. Now. Marco, please. Now, Gianna. Or you're done." I grabbed the tray he thrust at me, my hands shaking now, my mind screaming at me to run to the storage room, to Lucia, to make sure she was safe. I pushed through the door to the private dining room, barely seeing the men, barely hearing their conversation. I distributed plates mechanically, my entire body vibrating with the need to leave, to get to my daughter, and then I heard it. A phone. Ringing. One of the men at the table patted his pockets, frowning. "I thought I left it." Antonio Valente's head turned slowly toward the door. Toward the back of the restaurant. Toward the storage room where the ringing was coming from. His expression was unreadable, but something in his posture changed. Attention. A focus. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," he said to his companions, and walked out of the room. I stood frozen, the empty tray clutched in my hands. No. No, no, no. I followed him, my heart in my throat. He moved through the kitchen with the confidence of a man who owned everything he touched, ignoring the staff who froze at the sight of him. He walked straight to the storage room door and pushed it open. Lucia looked up from the folding chair, Antonio Valente's phone still clutched in her small hands, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered in Italian, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to." She stopped, because Antonio Valente stood in the doorway, his entire body rigid, staring at my daughter as if he'd seen a ghost. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The silence stretched, terrible and thick. Then he turned his head slightly, his voice carrying to Marco who'd followed us. "Find out who she is." His eyes never left Lucia. "And don't let her leave." The world narrowed to a single point. My daughter, small and terrified, staring up at the most dangerous man I'd never wanted to meet. I moved without thinking. I pushed past Antonio Valente, my shoulder glancing off his arm, solid as marble, and dropped to my knees in front of Lucia. My hands found her face, her shoulders, checking for harm even though I knew the only danger in this room was standing behind me. "Are you okay?" I asked in Italian, my voice shaking. "Did he hurt you?" "No, Mama," she whispered, her small hands clutching my uniform. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take his phone, I just—" "Shoo tesoro. It's not your fault." I pulled her against me, feeling her heartbeat flutter like a trapped bird. "Gianna." Marco's voice came from the doorway, tight with barely controlled panic. "Mr. Valente, I apologize, she's not supposed to bring her daughter to work. This is completely against policy." "Leave us," Antonio said quietly. The room went silent. "Sir." I said leave. There was no anger in his voice. He didn't need anger. Men like him didn't raise their voices to be obeyed. I heard Marco's retreating footsteps, the door clicking shut behind him. We were alone. I stood slowly, keeping Lucia behind me, my hand tight around hers. I forced myself to meet Antonio Valente's eyes. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Not because of cruelty. I'd learned to recognize that in men's faces. But because of intensity. Focus. As if the rest of the world had blurred and only we remained in sharp relief. "I'm sorry about the phone," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She didn't mean any harm. She's 5. She didn't know." "What's her name?" The question cut through my explanation like a blade. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to give this man anything. Not information. Not access. Not a single thread he could pull. "Lucia," I said finally. "Lucia," he repeated, and something flickered across his face. Pain maybe. Or recognition. His eyes moved past me to where she hid behind my legs. "She speaks Italian." "Yes." "Fluently." "Native." "Her father was from Napoli." I lifted my chin. "I'm sorry she disturbed your meeting, Mr. Valente. It won't happen again. We'll leave now." "No." The single word stopped me cold. "I need this job," I said quietly, desperation creeping into my voice despite my best efforts. "Please. I know I shouldn't have brought her here. I know it's against the rules. But my sitter canceled and I couldn't afford to miss another shift and," my voice cracked. "Please don't fire me." "I'm not firing you." He took a step closer, and I instinctively pulled Lucia tighter against me. He noticed. Stopped. Something that might have been hurt crossed his expression before it smoothed to neutrality. "I want to talk to her." "No." His eyebrows rose slightly. Probably not a word he heard often. "She's 5 years old," I said, my voice harder now. "She's terrified. And you're—" I stopped myself before I said something that would get us both killed. "I'm what?" His voice was soft. "Dangerous. You're a stranger," I finished. "And this has already frightened her enough." For a long moment, he simply looked at me. Then his gaze dropped again to Lucia, who had peeked out from behind my legs, her dark eyes wide and curious despite her fear. "How old?" he asked quietly. "I just told you. 5. When's her birthday? Unease prickled down my spine. Why does that matter? Answer the question, Gianna. The sound of my name in his mouth sent a chill through me. I hadn't told him my name. March, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. March 15th. Something shifted in his expression. His hand curled into a fist at his side, then slowly relaxed. My daughter, he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, would have been 8 this year. Her birthday was March 12th. The past tense landed like a stone in still water. Would have been. I'm sorry, I whispered, because what else could I say? He looked at Lucia again, his jaw tight, his eyes holding an emotion I couldn't name. You'll come to my office, he said, his voice rough. Both of you. Now. Mr. Valente. It wasn't a request. He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind me, Lucia's small voice broke the quiet. Mama, why is that man so sad? I had no answer. But I knew, with sinking certainty, that whatever happened next would change everything. And I had absolutely no power to stop it. Antonio Valente's office was nothing like I expected. I'd imagined darkness, leather and mahogany, the kind of space designed to intimidate. Instead, the room was surprisingly bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights, modern furniture in warm woods and cream tones, and on the credenza behind his desk, a photograph in a silver frame. A little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile, holding a gelato cone nearly as big as her head. My chest tightened. Antonio gestured to the chairs facing his desk, but I remained standing, Lucia's hand still gripped in mine. Please, he said quietly. Sit. We'd rather stand. His jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. Instead of moving behind his desk, the power position, he leaned against it, hands in his pockets. The gesture made him seem almost human. I'm not going to hurt you, he said, his eyes moving between us. Either of you. Then what do you want? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Why are we here? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on Lucia, who had stopped hiding behind me and now stood slightly to my side, curiosity winning over fear. When I heard her voice on the phone, he said finally, speaking Italian. He paused, something raw crossing his face. She sounded like Isabel. My daughter. The past tense again. That terrible finality. What happened to her? I asked softly, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. She was killed. 5 years ago. His voice was carefully controlled, but I heard the fracture beneath it. She was 8 years old. Wrong place, wrong time. My world has consequences. Lucia tugged on my hand. Mama, can I sit down? My legs are tired. Before I could answer, Antonio moved. He crossed to a corner of the office I hadn't noticed, a small seating area with a couch, coffee table, and a basket of toys that looked untouched. Waiting. He pulled out the basket, kneeling to Lucia's level. There are some books, he said in Italian, his voice gentler than I'd heard it. And coloring supplies. Would you like them? Lucia looked up at me, uncertain. I should have said no. Should have pulled her away from him, from this office, from whatever trap was closing around us. But something in the way he looked at her, with such careful, aching tenderness, stopped me. It's okay, Tesoro, I heard myself say. She took the basket carefully, as if it might disappear, and settled on the small couch. Within moments, she was absorbed in a coloring book, her earlier fear apparently forgotten with the resilience only children possess. Antonio stood, watching her with an expression I couldn't quite read. You still haven't told me what you want, I said quietly. He turned to me, and for the first time I saw him fully. Not as the dangerous man everyone whispered about, but as a father, grieving, broken, searching for something he'd lost. I want to help you, he said. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Why? Because you're struggling. Because your daughter deserves better than hiding in storage rooms and eating cold pasta while her mother works herself to exhaustion. His eyes held mine. Because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes and no one to spend it on. I don't need charity. No, he agreed. You need a job that pays you what you're worth. Childcare you can trust. A place to live that doesn't take 70% of your income. He paused. I can provide all of that. My heart pounded. In exchange for what? Nothing. At my skeptical look, he continued. I own a dozen properties. One of them is a guest house on my estate. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished. Currently empty. You and Lucia could live there. Rent-free. Why would you? Because when I look at her, he interrupted, his voice rough, I see what I lost. And when I look at you, I see someone fighting like hell to protect what they have. He ran a hand through his hair, the first uncertain gesture I'd seen from him. Let me do this. Please. The please undid something in me. I looked at Lucia, content and safe for the first time in hours. I thought about our apartment with its broken heating and the landlord who'd slipped an eviction notice under our door last week. I thought about the second job I'd need to take if I lost this one. The impossibility of it all. There's always a catch, I said quietly. The catch, Antonio said, is that I'm a selfish man. Having you close, seeing her smile, hearing Italian in my house again? He met my eyes. It might help me remember what it felt like to be human. Before I could respond, Lucia looked up from her coloring. Signore, she said in careful Italian, do you like purple? I'm making the sky purple because normal is boring. Antonio's expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. Purple is my favorite, he said quietly. And I realized, with creeping certainty, that I was already in too deep to find my way out. The Valente estate sat in the hills outside the city, hidden behind iron gates and ancient oak trees. As the car wound up the long driveway, Antonio's driver had insisted on taking us, my beat-up Honda deemed unreliable for the journey. I felt my stomach twist with fresh anxiety. This wasn't a house. It was a compound. Stone walls. Security cameras. Men in suits stationed at intervals who nodded respectfully as our car passed. Mama, Lucia whispered, pressed against the window, it's like a castle. It's just a house, tesoro, I murmured, though my own eyes widened as the main residence came into view. A sprawling villa of honey-colored stone and terracotta roof tiles, surrounded by manicured gardens that probably required a full-time staff. The guest house, Antonio had said. As if that made this normal. Our guest house turned out to be larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a full kitchen with appliances that looked like they'd never been used, and windows that overlooked a garden where lemon trees grew in neat rows. There's a bed for me? Lucia breathed, staring at the bedroom Antonio, who'd arrived before us, had designated as hers. It had been prepared with fresh linens in soft pink, a bookshelf already stocked with children's books in both English and Italian, and a stuffed giraffe sitting on the pillow. All yours, Piccolina, Antonio said quietly from the doorway. She turned to him, her face radiant. Can I really keep the giraffe? Everything in this room is yours. I watched my daughter throw her arms around a stuffed animal, squealing with delight, and felt something crack in my chest. When was the last time I'd been able to give her something new? Something just for her? This is too much, I said quietly to Antonio as Lucia explored her new room. It's a fraction of what I spend monthly on things that matter far less, he replied, his eyes following Lucia with that same aching expression I'd seen in his office. After he left us to settle in, I explored the space with mounting unease. The refrigerator had been stocked. The closets held fresh towels. In the master bedroom, I found an envelope on the dresser with my name written in elegant script. Inside was a check that made my vision blur. First month's salary as my personal assistant, the note read. You start Monday. Childcare has been arranged. Details to follow. Avi. Personal assistant. I sank onto the bed, the check trembling in my hands. This was more than I made in 3 months at the restaurant. I should have been grateful, relieved. Instead, I felt trapped. That evening, after I'd put Lucia to bed, her soft breathing a comfort in the unfamiliar space, a knock came at the door. Antonio stood on the step, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked exhausted. Human. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed, he said. We're fine. Thank you. An awkward silence stretched between us. Would you like a drink? He asked finally, gesturing toward the main house. There's something I'd like to show you. If you're comfortable leaving Lucia for a few minutes. I have monitors. The system will alert us if she wakes. I should have said no. But curiosity, and something else I didn't want to name, made me nod. The main house was as magnificent inside as out. He led me through marble hallways lined with art, past rooms that echoed with emptiness, to a wing that felt different from the rest. He stopped in front of a closed door, his hand on the handle. No one's been in here since the funeral, he said quietly. Not even the cleaning staff. He opened the door. The room was frozen in time. A child's bedroom, painted in soft yellow, with a canopy bed draped in white lace. Bookshelves lined with stories in Italian and English. A desk covered in drawings. Photographs pinned to a corkboard. A little girl at various ages, always smiling. Always alive. Isabel, I whispered. Antonio stepped inside, moving to the desk. He picked up one of the drawings, a crayon family portrait. Mama, Papa, and a little girl with a gap-toothed grin, all holding hands under a purple sky. She loved purple too, he said, his voice rough. Said it was the color of magic. I moved to stand beside him, looking at the portrait. Where's her mother? His jaw tightened. Gone. 6 months after we buried Isabel, Natalia left. She said, he stopped, swallowed hard. She said she couldn't look at me without seeing the world that killed our daughter. That it was my fault for being who I am. Antonio. She was right. He set the drawing down carefully, as if it might shatter. I built an empire on violence and compromise. I made enemies. And my daughter paid the price for my choices. I didn't know what to say. What comfort could I possibly offer? Why are you showing me this? I asked softly. He turned to me, his dark eyes holding mine. Because I need you to understand. If you and Lucia stay here, you're entering my world. And my world is dangerous. His voice dropped. But I swear to you, Gianna, I will protect you both with everything I have. I couldn't save Isabel. But I can save you. The words hung between us, heavy with promise and pain. You don't owe us anything, I whispered. No, he agreed. But maybe I owe myself the chance to be something other than the man who lost everything. In that moment, standing in his dead daughter's bedroom with moonlight spilling through the windows, I saw Antonio Valente clearly for the first time. Not a monster. Not a savior. Just a broken man searching for redemption in the smile of a 5-year-old girl who reminded him of everything he'd lost. And God help me, I wanted to give him that. 3 weeks passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. My job as Antonio's personal assistant turned out to be remarkably simple. Manage his personal calendar, handle correspondence that required Italian translation, occasionally accompany him to meetings where my presence as a native speaker smoothed negotiations. But mostly, I began to suspect, he'd created the position simply to give me a salary I could accept without feeling like charity. Lucia bloomed like a flower finally given sunlight. She had her own room, her own toys, clothes that fit, and, most precious of all, time with her mother. I no longer worked doubles. No longer came home too exhausted to read her bedtime stories. No longer had to choose between groceries and heat. And then there was Antonio. He appeared at unexpected moments. Breakfast on Saturday mornings, bringing fresh cornetti from a bakery in the city. Evenings when he'd knock on our door with a bottle of wine for me and gelato for Lucia. Afternoons when I'd find him in the garden with my daughter, speaking to her in gentle Italian about the lemon trees, the flowers, the birds. Did you know, Lucia told me one evening, her eyes wide with wonder, that Signor Antonio has a cat? He lives in the big house and his name is Dante and he's very fat. Is that so? I tried not to smile. Signor Antonio says Dante is lazy, but I think he's just waiting for the right person to play with him. She tugged on my hand. Can we go see him tomorrow? Please. Which is how I found myself the next afternoon standing in Antonio's living room, a space I'd avoided until now, watching my daughter giggle as an enormous orange tabby purred in her lap. He showed up after Isabel died, Antonio said quietly, standing beside me. Wouldn't leave. I tried to send him away a dozen times. A soft smile touched his lips. She would have loved him. Lucia certainly does, I said, watching my daughter whisper secrets to the cat in Italian. She reminds me so much of her, Antonio said, his voice rough. Not just her age or the language. The way she sees magic in ordinary things. The way she trusts so easily. Too easily, sometimes, I murmured. I worry about that. He turned to me, his dark eyes serious. You've taught her that the world can be good, Gianna. That people can be kind. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Mama, Lucia called. Dante wants you to pet him too. I crossed the room and sat beside her, running my hand over the cat's silky fur. He purred louder, his eyes closing in contentment. Antonio lowered himself onto the couch beside us, close enough that I felt the warmth of him, caught the scent of his cologne and something else. Coffee and cedar. You know what we need? Lucia announced. A picnic. With sandwiches and fruit and those little chocolate things from the bakery. Bocce, Antonio supplied. Yes. Those. She turned her luminous eyes on him. Can we have a picnic, Signor Antonio? Tomorrow? Please. I started to intervene. Tesoro, Signor Antonio is a busy man. Actually, Antonio said, his eyes meeting mine with something that looked like hope, I can't think of anything I'd rather do. The picnic happened the next day in the garden, spread on a blanket under the lemon trees. Lucia ran between us like a butterfly, bringing flowers she'd picked, showing us beetles and interesting rocks, her laughter echoing off the stone walls of the estate. More wine? Antonio asked, holding up the bottle. I shouldn't, I said, but held out my glass anyway. When was the last time you did something you wanted instead of something you should? He asked quietly. I watched Lucia chase a butterfly, her sundress bright against the green grass. I can't remember, I admitted. Then start now. He poured the wine, his fingers brushing mine as I took the glass. The touch sent electricity up my arm. We sat in comfortable silence, watching my daughter play, the afternoon sun warm on our faces. Thank you, I said quietly. For all of this. I gestured helplessly at the garden, the house, the life he'd given us. Gianna. He set down his glass and turned to face me fully. You don't have to keep thanking me. Yes, I do. You changed our lives. You changed mine, he said simply. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. Lucia ran up then, breathless and glowing. Mama, Signor Antonio, look what I made. She held out a crown woven from dandelions and grass, lopsided and perfect. It's beautiful, amore, I said. It's for you, Signor Antonio, she announced, and before he could react, she placed it on his head with great ceremony. Now you're the king of the garden. I expected him to remove it, to laugh it off. Instead, Antonio Valente, one of the most dangerous men in the city, sat perfectly still, his eyes bright with unshed tears, wearing a crown made by a 5-year-old girl who decided he was worth her affection. Thank you, Principessa, he said, his voice thick. I'll treasure it. Lucia beamed, then ran off to make another. Antonio looked at me, the ridiculous crown slipping slightly on his head, his expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. I don't deserve this, he whispered. Either of you. I reached out without thinking and straightened the crown. Maybe not, I said softly. But you have us anyway. His hand came up to cover mine where it rested against his temple. Warm. Solid. Real. I won't waste it, he promised. This second chance. I won't waste it. Looking into his eyes, I believed him. And somewhere between the lemon trees and the dandelion crown, between the laughter of my daughter and the warmth of his hand on mine, I realized I'd stopped being afraid. I'd started hoping instead. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in Antonio's office, reviewing correspondence, when raised voices echoed from the hallway. I looked up as the door burst open and a man I'd never seen before strode in, tall, silver-haired, with cold eyes and an expensive suit. "Antonio," he said, his voice smooth as silk and just as dangerous. "We need to talk." Antonio stood slowly from behind his desk, his entire posture shifting into something predatory. "Russo. I don't recall inviting you to my home." Russo. The name sent ice down my spine. I'd heard it whispered by the staff, always with fear. Rival family. Old grudges. Blood debt. "You've been difficult to reach," Russo said, his eyes flicking to me with casual interest. "Hiding behind your gates. Your security." A cold smile. "Your new distractions." "Get out," Antonio said quietly. "I hear you've gotten soft, Valente. Playing house with a waitress and her bastard daughter." Russo's smile widened. "Isabel's barely cold in the ground, and you're replacing her with some street rat." Antonio moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was behind his desk, the next his hand was around Russo's throat, slamming him against the wall. "Say her name again," Antonio growled, his voice stripped of all civility. "Say either of their names again and I'll kill you right here." "Prove my point, why don't you?" Russo choked out, his face reddening. "You've made them targets, Antonio. Everyone knows it. The great Valente's weakness, living in his guesthouse like pets." My blood ran cold. Antonio released him with a shove. "Marco," he shouted, and within seconds 2 security guards appeared. "Escort Mr. Russo off the property. If he returns, shoot him." The guards hauled Russo toward the door, but he called over his shoulder, "Check the girls' school, Antonio. You might want to upgrade security. Lots of vulnerable moments in a child's day. Playgrounds, parking lots, so many opportunities for accidents." The door slammed shut. Silence crashed over the room like a wave. Antonio stood with his back to me, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched into fists. "What did he mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. "About Lucia's school?" "Nothing. It was a threat. Posturing. Posturing." I stood, my heart hammering. He knew her name, Antonio. He knew where she goes to school. "I'll increase security." "Security?" My voice rose. "She's 5 years old. She shouldn't need security." He turned to face me, his expression hard. Controlled. The gentleman who'd worn a dandelion crown was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "This is my world, Gianna. I warned you. You said you'd protect us." I shouted. "You said we'd be safe here. You are safe here. Do you think I'd let anything happen to either of you? You can't control everything." Tears burned my eyes. God, Antonio, what was I thinking? I let myself believe. I broke off, shaking my head. I put my daughter in danger for what? A nice house? Money? Because I was lonely? Is that what you think this is? His voice was low. Dangerous. I don't know what this is. I don't know who you really are. My chest heaved. You're not the man in the garden. You're not the man who wears dandelion crowns. You're him. I gestured to where he'd held Russo against the wall. Your violence and threats and blood. And I brought my daughter into this world. Gianna. No. I stepped back. I can't do this. I won't risk her. Not for this. Not for you. Something cracked in his expression. Where will you go? Back to your apartment with the broken heat and the eviction notice. The words hit like a slap. At least there, the only person who could hurt her was poverty, I said quietly. Not men with guns and grudges. I won't let you leave. The words hung between us, not a plea but a command. And just like that, every fear I'd buried came roaring back. You can't keep us here, I said, my voice trembling. That's kidnapping. I'm keeping you safe. You're keeping us prisoner. I moved toward the door. This was a mistake. All of it. I need to get Lucia and we need to leave. I love you. The words stopped me cold. I turned slowly. Antonio stood in the center of the room, his control finally shattered, his eyes desperate. I love you, he repeated, his voice raw. Both of you. You've become my family. My reason for, he stopped, swallowed hard. Don't take that away from me. Please. My heart broke and mended and broke again. Love isn't supposed to feel like danger, Antonio, I whispered. It's supposed to feel safe. Then let me make it safe. Let me end this. Russo and anyone else who would threaten you. By doing what? Killing them? I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I won't let my daughter grow up thinking that's what love looks like. Violence and control and... Mama. We both froze. Lucia stood in the doorway, her backpack on her shoulders, her eyes wide and frightened. Why are you crying? She asked in Italian, her small voice cracking. Why are you yelling at Signor Antonio? I crossed to her, scooping her into my arms. We're leaving, Tesoro. Go pack your things. But I don't want to leave. Tears filled her eyes. I like it here. I like Dante and the garden and Signor Antonio. Now, Lucia. Over her head, my eyes met Antonio's. His expression was devastated. Defeated. Gianna, he said quietly. Please. Let me fix this. You can't fix what you are, I said. And I walked out, my daughter crying in my arms, leaving behind the man who'd given us everything and the life I'd been foolish enough to believe could last. I made it exactly 14 blocks before I had to pull over. My hands shook on the steering wheel of my beat-up Honda. Antonio's driver had returned it to the guest house weeks ago, fully serviced, though I'd never asked him to. The engine ticked as it cooled. In the back seat, Lucia had finally cried herself to sleep, her face blotchy and streaked with tears. I want to go home, she'd sobbed. I want to go back to Signor Antonio. That's not our home, baby, I'd whispered, even as the words shredded my heart. But sitting there in the growing darkness, I had to face the truth. I didn't know where home was anymore. Our old apartment? I'd called the landlord from a gas station. Already rented to someone else. My job at Bellissimo? I'd been gone for weeks. Marco had probably replaced me within days. I had $847 in my checking account. Antonio's last salary. Payment sat untouched. I'd been too proud to deposit it, some stupid part of me insisting I didn't need his money. God, what had I done? I'd left safety. Security. A man who loved us. A man who'd choked someone in front of me. A man whose world had made my daughter a target. My phone buzzed. I'd silenced Antonio's calls after the 7th one, but I couldn't stop myself from checking. Not Antonio this time. An unknown number. My stomach clenched as I opened the text. Smart choice, leaving. The girl is safer away from Valente. For now. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Russo. He'd made his point horrifyingly clear. It didn't matter if we left. We'd been seen. Marked. Associated with Antonio Valente. The danger didn't end just because we drove away. I looked at Lucia in the rearview mirror, small and vulnerable in her car seat, and felt the crushing weight of my powerlessness. I couldn't protect her from this. Not alone. Antonio sat in Isabel's room, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. He'd come here after Gianna left, drawn to the one place that understood grief. The drawings on the wall. The photograph. The silence that screamed with absence. I failed again, he said to the empty room. To the ghost of his daughter. I tried to save them and I only made it worse. His phone sat on Isabel's desk, dark and accusing. He'd called Gianna 7 times. She'd answered none of them. Marco stood in the doorway, uncomfortable. "Boss, we have the security footage." Russo had 3 men watching the guesthouse. Another 2 at the girls' school. Antonio's jaw tightened. "Did we pick them up?" 2. The others scattered when they realized we were onto them. Marco hesitated. "What do you want us to do?" What did he want? He wanted to burn Russo's empire to ash. Wanted to make an example so brutal no one would ever threaten his family again. His family. Gianna had walked away. She'd made her choice. "Let them go," Antonio said quietly. Marco's eyes widened. "Boss. If Gianna and Lucia aren't under my protection, they're not targets. Russo has no leverage." The words tasted like poison. "Spread the word. They're no longer associated with me. No longer my concern." It was the biggest lie he'd ever told. And Russo? Antonio stood, his decision crystallizing. "I'm out. Completely. Sell my interest. Liquidate the shipping companies, the warehouses, all of it. Keep only the legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the properties." "Antonio, I can't be this anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't be the reason good people get hurt. I can't be the man who killed his daughter and drove away the only woman I've—" He stopped. Swallowed hard. "It ends. All of it. Tonight." Marco was silent for a long moment. "And if Russo doesn't accept that? Then I'll deal with him. One last time." Antonio's voice hardened. "But after that, I'm done. I want out of this world, Marco. I want to be someone who deserves to wear dandelion crowns." He picked up his phone, typed out a message, hesitated with his thumb over the send button. "I'm leaving this life. For you. For Lucia. For the man I want to be. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know, you were right. Love should feel safe. Give me a chance to make it that way." He hit send before he could change his mind. Then he made a call to his lawyer and began the process of dismantling everything he'd spent 20 years building. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look, terrified it would be another threat from Russo. But it was Antonio. I read his message once, twice, 3 times. "I'm leaving this life. For you. For Lucia. For the man I want to be." My hands trembled. This was impossible. You didn't just walk away from that world. Men like Antonio Valente didn't get to retire, to become normal, to choose love over power. Did they? Another text came through. A news article. Valente Enterprises announces major restructuring. Antonio Valente stepping down from security and shipping operations. It was real. He was doing it. Actually doing it. My phone rang. Antonio's name on the screen. I stared at it, my heart pounding, torn between hope and terror. Lucia stirred in the back seat. "Mama? Where are we?" "I don't know, baby," I whispered. The phone kept ringing. One choice. Everything depended on it. Answer and risk believing in redemption, in second chances, in a man who'd promised to change his entire world for us. Or let it ring, drive away, and spend the rest of my life wondering if I'd thrown away the only real family we'd had since Marco died. My finger hovered over the screen. "Is it Signor Antonio?" Lucia asked quietly. "I miss him, Mama." I closed my eyes. Love should feel safe, I'd told him. He was trying to make it that way. Could I be brave enough to let him try? I answered the call. "Gianna." His voice was rough, desperate. "Please don't hang up." "I'm listening," I whispered. "I need you to know something. The man you saw today, the violence, the threats, that's who I was. Past tense." He took a shaky breath. "I'm walking away from all of it. The criminal operations, the dangerous alliances, everything. It's already in motion. Antonio. I know it doesn't erase what I've done. I know you have every right not to trust me. But I'm asking, no, I'm begging, For a chance to prove I can be the man you and Lucia deserve. Tears streamed down my face. What about Russo? What about all the people who... I'm handling it. Legally this time. My lawyer is already filing restraining orders and alerting the authorities to his threat. And if that's not enough, his voice hardened. I still have resources. Power. I'll use every bit of it to keep you safe. Both of you. But no more blood. No more violence. You can't just stop being who you are. No, he agreed quietly. But I can choose who I become. In the back seat, Lucia was watching me with those huge, hopeful eyes. If I come back, I said slowly, things have to be different. Anything. Name it. No more secrets. No more handling things without telling me. If we're in danger, I need to know. Done. And Lucia comes first. Always. Before your business, before your pride, before me, he finished. I know. She already does. I took a shaky breath. I'm scared, Antonio. So am I, he admitted. I'm terrified I'll fail you. That I'll slip back into old patterns. That I'm not capable of being what you need. A pause. But I love you, Gianna. Both of you. And that has to count for something. It counted for everything. We're 14 blocks away, I whispered. At the corner of Madison and 5th. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Antonio. Yes. Don't make me regret this. I won't, he promised. I swear on Isabel's memory, I won't. The call ended. I looked at Lucia in the mirror. We're going back? She asked, her voice small and hopeful. We're going back, I confirmed. To Signor Antonio? To home, I said softly. We're going home. Antonio's car pulled up exactly 4 minutes later. He got out before it fully stopped, his eyes scanning until they found us. The relief that washed over his face made my heart clench. He approached slowly, carefully, as if afraid I might bolt again. Hi, Signor Antonio, Lucia said shyly from my arms. Ciao, Principessa, he said softly, his eyes never leaving mine. I missed you. I missed you too. She wiggled free from my grip and ran to him. He caught her, lifting her into his arms, his eyes closing as he held her tight. When he opened them again, they were wet. Can we go home now? Lucia asked. Dante probably misses me. Antonio's gaze moved to me, questioning. Hopeful. I nodded. Yes, Piccolina, he said, his voice rough. Let's go home. 6 months later. Mama. Papa. Look how high I can swing. I looked up from the book I was reading, shading my eyes against the afternoon sun. Lucia pumped her legs on the swing Antonio had installed in the garden, her laughter echoing off the stone walls. Very high, tesoro, I called. Be careful. Antonio appeared from the house carrying a tray with lemonade and cookies. He'd been working from home more, legitimate business now, restaurants and properties, board meetings and investment portfolios. Boring, he joked last week. Wonderfully, blissfully boring. He set the tray down and settled beside me on the blanket, his hand finding mine automatically. Russo's trial starts next week, he said quietly. I tensed slightly. The name still had power, though less than before. The prosecutor is confident? I asked. Very. Between the restraining order violations, the threatening texts, and the testimony from his own men. Antonio squeezed my hand. He's going away for a long time, Gianna. I exhaled slowly. Good. We sat in silence, watching Lucia play, the moment peaceful in a way I'd never quite believed possible. I got the final paperwork today, Antonio said. From the lawyers. And it's done. All of it. Every connection to the old business, severed. I'm completely out. He turned to me, his dark eyes serious. I'm just a restaurant owner now. A boring, legitimate businessman. Who happens to be obscenely wealthy, I teased. Minor detail. A smile tugged at his lips. Then it faded. Do you ever regret it? Coming back that night. I looked at him, This man who'd dismantled an empire for us, who'd chosen love over power, who wore dandelion crowns and read bedtime stories and still looked at my daughter as if she'd saved his life. Not for a second, I said honestly. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, tasting like lemonade and summer and promises kept. Mama, Papa, stop kissing, Lucia shouted, giggling. It's gross. We broke apart, laughing. Come here, you, Antonio called, and she ran over, flinging herself into his lap. He caught her easily, this man whose hands had once dealt in violence, now gentle as he tucked her hair behind her ear. I love you, Piccolina, he said in Italian. More than gelato? She asked, our old ritual claimed as his too now. More than all the stars, he replied. She beamed and turned to me. Mama, can I tell him? My heart swelled. Go ahead, baby. Lucia turned back to Antonio, her face serious. I've been thinking. You're not Signor Antonio anymore. His expression flickered with uncertainty. No. No. She shook her head firmly. You're Papa now. Is that okay? I watched emotions cascade across Antonio's face. Shock, joy, grief for the daughter he'd lost, gratitude for the gift he'd been given. That's, his voice broke. He cleared his throat. That's more than okay, Principessa. That's everything. She threw her arms around his neck, and he held her like she was made of starlight and second chances. Over her head, his eyes met mine. Thank you, he mouthed. I smiled, tears blurring my vision. 2 years ago, I'd been a struggling waitress hiding my daughter in a storage room, praying just to survive another day. Now I watched that same daughter call a reformed mob boss Papa in a garden filled with lemon trees, and felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever when my husband died. Home. Not a place. Not safety or money or security, though we had those now too. Home was this, the three of us, choosing each other every single day. Antonio had promised he wouldn't waste his second chance. Looking at my family, because that's what we were now, broken pieces fitted together into something whole, I knew he'd kept that promise. And I had too. We'd both chosen love. And love, it turned out, had chosen us right back. That's today's story. If it moved you, please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. It means more than you know.